The award for Best Actor, the culmination of all my hard work, had just been handed out as if it were a party favor. Backstage, in the quiet of the dressing room, she found me. "Is there anything else you want?" Isabella asked, her voice low. "I'll do my best to give it to you." I looked at the woman I had been in love with for years. My entire plan had revolved around winning that award tonight. I was going to propose, to finally close the distance I always felt between us. But now, in the sterile quiet of this room, all I wanted to do was give up. Isabella didn't need to ask me about it. She already knew the answer. She ran the largest entertainment company in the country, a titan of industry worth billions. Even prestigious film awards like this one were not immune to the influence of capital. If she decided the Best Actor award should go to someone else, what power did I have to stop her? Right now, she was sitting on the plush couch, her head tilted slightly downward, her brow furrowed with a deep-seated tiredness. "I know you've been preparing for this award for a long time," she said, tapping a manicured finger on the armrest, her voice a soft murmur. "But Caleb needs it to boost his career. I know you feel hard done by, so is there any other compensation I can offer?" Wow. She really understood what this award meant to me, didn't she? She knew everything. She knew about the year of leaving for the set before sunrise and coming home long after midnight. She knew I had refused to use a stunt double, wanting to connect more deeply with the role. She knew about the scene on the cliff where a wire malfunctioned, leaving me suspended in mid-air for hours, a technical glitch away from a fatal accident. On the brink of death, my thoughts had been of her. I wanted this award to prove I could stand at the top, to show everyone that I was worthy of being by her side. But in that instant, all of that fierce determination vanished like smoke. My gaze drifted, my mind replaying an incident from the week before. An assistant, a recent graduate, had been fired because he missed a day of work. His mother had just passed away, and he'd been awake for days handling the arrangements. He had come to Isabella's villa this morning, his face a mask of desperation. "I don't really want anything for myself," I said, my voice feeling distant. "But can you give that assistant another chance? He really needs the job, and he promised something like that would never happen again." Isabella seemed genuinely taken aback. She rose from the couch and walked toward me, her brow furrowed even more deeply. "That's what you want?" she asked, pausing as she studied my face. A moment of hesitation passed between us. "I've never seen you so eager to help other people, Leo. Isn't there anything else you want to say to me?" I glanced down at myself. I was wearing a brand new, luxurious suit, custom-tailored for this night, but it suddenly felt like a pointless costume. On the ring finger of my right hand was a simple platinum band, one of a pair that Isabella and I had purchased together years ago. I was the only one who ever wore it. It was time to wake up from this long dream. "Leo, you aren't from the same world as her," I told myself. With a sense of finality, I slipped the ring off my finger and laid it gently on the table between us. "Isabella, thank you for these last few years," I said, my voice steady. "From now on, let's walk our separate paths." The dressing room was a private space, just the two of us. Her expression darkened, a somber and serious mask falling over her features. After a long, heavy silence, she finally spoke, her voice laced with ice. "You've made up your mind? All over a silly award?" I nodded. "Yes, this is all about the award." Isabella let out a short, mocking laugh. "Fine, Leo," she said, striding toward the door without a single glance back. "I don't need the ring. It's only a few $1,000s, nothing I'm short of." She was right, of course. For 7 years, Isabella had been an incredibly generous girlfriend. She showered me with luxury goods, from jewelry and cars to entire homes. But those rings, they were the one thing I had ever asked her for. I had just graduated from film school back then. A fresh face in the industry with no resources or connections to my name. My only real asset was my looks. The boss of my small agency had brought me to a glamorous industry party, pointing out the influential guests. "Leo," he'd said, "if you can latch on to any of those big shots, your career path will be smooth sailing." Thrown into the glittering crowd, I was quickly approached by an aging businessman with wandering hands. I backed away instinctively. The room was crowded, and a desperate thought flashed through my mind. If I had to cling to someone for my career, at least let it be someone younger and better looking. In the next moment, I did the boldest, most reckless thing of my life. I accidentally spilled my drink on Isabella as she passed by, grabbing her sleeve in feigned panic. "Can you take me away from here?" I'd asked. Isabella told me later that she was used to men throwing themselves at her, but that I must have been the dumbest one she had ever encountered. My approach had left her completely speechless. I was just an ingenue back then, with no clue about how anything in that world worked. For 7 years, Isabella and I stayed together. For the first 4 of those years, we never went public with our relationship. I poured every bit of my emotion and anticipation into it, even in secrecy. One year, for my birthday, she asked me what I wanted after we had lunch at a mall. I dragged her into a local jewelry store and picked out a simple platinum band, carefully putting it on my finger. Isabella casually tossed the matching ring box into her coat pocket, glancing at me with an indifferent air. "Leo," she said, "this doesn't mean much, you know." I wore that ring for 7 years. I never once saw Isabella wear hers. 4 years into our relationship, one of my television dramas became a massive hit. Suddenly, I had millions of followers on social media, and the paparazzi started tailing me everywhere. Amidst a flurry of exposure over several days, a picture leaked of me leaving Isabella's private villa. The public buzzed with speculation. Her family's influence was colossal, and she normally kept an intensely low profile. But this time, Isabella didn't ask her team to bury the trending topic. Instead, she simply announced our relationship on her official social media account. Many people said I was lucky to have landed someone like Isabella. Others claimed she was just toying with me and would discard me as soon as she grew bored. I never bothered to listen to any of the outside comments. Staring at the ring on my hand back then, I allowed myself a wild fantasy. Was it the small bit of fame I had achieved that made her finally acknowledge me? What if I became even more successful? What if I became a top actor, admired by everyone? Would we get married then? Looking back now, that thought feels so painfully naive. Maybe it didn't matter how hard I tried. In Isabella's eyes, perhaps I was, and always would be, worthless. I let out a dry chuckle, picked up my phone, and called my agent. "Where are you? Can you pick me up now? I want to go to the airport." "To where? The airport?" The voice on the other end shot up several octaves. "Leo, have you been drinking? The award ceremony starts in less than an hour, and you're telling me you want to go somewhere?" I had to hold the phone away from my ear. A few years back, after starring in a couple of well-received films, I had gained a solid foothold in the industry. When my contract ended, I didn't renew with my old company. Instead, I started my own small studio. My current agent is Alex, a senior from my college drama club. We've known each other for years and are as close as brothers. He has a short temper, but he genuinely has my best interests at heart. Hearing my intention to bail on the biggest night of my career, he immediately started laying out all the pros and cons. "Did you run into an old rival? Get into a fight? Just hang in there, kiddo," he pleaded. "I met with loads of media representatives and film critics lately. They all think you did great this time. I'm not saying it's a sure thing, but there's like a 95% chance you'll get that Best Actor award." 95%. I looked up and gave a wry smile. Positive feedback from notoriously harsh film critics was unexpected, But what did it matter now? I had worked so hard to get here, but with just a few words, Isabella could dismiss all of my efforts over the past year. I won't get it, I said quietly, closing my eyes. They've already given it to Caleb. I didn't quite catch what was said on the other end, but it sounded like some very harsh words were being exchanged. Within half an hour, my friend showed up. The venue was swarming with media reporters. It's hard to imagine how he managed to get a pass and squeeze his way into my private dressing room. He embraced me tightly, offering a solid reassurance. It's all right, Leo. To hell with that award. Let's get out of here. No need to stick around and take crap from anyone. He tugged at my wrist, leading me out through the back employee passage. If I didn't win, I wouldn't have to face the inevitable media frenzy and their thinly veiled ridicule. I looked at my friend, and suddenly my gloomy heart felt a little bit warmer. You see, there's always someone who's got your back, no matter what. He ranted the entire way, from Isabella to the organizers, from the entertainment company to the press. No one escaped his ire. By the time we exited the security perimeter and quietly got into the car, his hands were gripping the steering wheel in frustration. The car lurched forward, and he turned to me as if just remembering something. Wait, where were you headed? The airport? Didn't you book a ticket already? I took a deep breath, nodded, and replied softly, Norway. Given the preceding chain of events, my brother seemed to take it in stride. At least he didn't slam on the brakes right there in the middle of the road. He just gave a small exclamation, glanced at me, tapped the steering wheel, and patiently waited for my explanation. I lowered my head, fished my phone from my bag, opened my email, and pulled up a new movie offer letter, handing it to him. A new film is starting up. It's shooting in Norway. It's on a tight schedule, so they contacted me directly. The script's decent. I'll have them send the contract over to you later. At the bottom of the offer letter, you could see the sender's name. Clara. Clara's name was well known in film school. She was a young prodigy director who had made her first short film at 17 and won international awards. She was said to be demanding and serious, with incredibly high standards and a number of quirks. For instance, she avoided working with big-name actors who had major awards under their belts. She preferred young, unknown actors for their versatility and the challenge they presented. Though her films were notoriously tough to make, her works were, without exception, both commercially and critically acclaimed. Years ago, Clara had reached out to me. I still remember the thrill of seeing her collaboration invitation in my inbox. She was considered one of the most talented and well-known directors of our time. The thought of having her guide me in my acting was exhilarating. I told Isabella right away, expecting at least a little excitement from her, but she was completely indifferent. She stared at me, almost sneering. Clara? No way. You're not going unless you want to kiss your other opportunities goodbye, Leo. I turned Clara down. Later, I learned that the relationship between them was more complicated than I had thought. When Isabella was about 5 or 6, her parents divorced. Her mother, a dancer, remarried Clara's widowed father a few years later, becoming Clara's stepmother. After their marriage, she didn't have any more children, focusing instead on raising her stepdaughter. As for her biological daughter, Isabella, she never visited her once, almost as if she had cut all ties. The person who shared this story with me shook his head and gave me a meaningful look. So now you know how much she hates Clara, right? If you plan to stay with Isabella, I'd advise keeping away from those she doesn't like. That's how it was. After declining her offer once, I started avoiding Clara. For years, our paths never crossed. But 2 weeks before this award ceremony, my inbox surprised me with an email from her. It was simple, just a few hundred words, talking about a new movie she was about to start shooting. The project was still in the planning stage, so it hadn't been made public yet. The male lead, she wrote, really fit my image. If possible, they would love to make this collaboration happen. At the bottom was Clara's private phone number. I knew Clara didn't like to work with artists who had already won mainstream awards. I had heard that rumor too. So if we could sign this contract before the Film Festival Awards, it might be our last chance to work together. I read the email several times, then looked up at the night sky outside my window. This felt like a crossroads. To the left was Isabella. To the right was my career. I took a deep breath. At that time, I passed up what I thought was the last chance. Until today. An hour before the award ceremony, Isabella found me and said she was going to take away my award. In my most confused and lost moment, I sent a text to Clara. She replied almost instantly. "I told you, you're the best fit for the leading role. Norway, Svalbard Archipelago. I can contact an assistant to book you a ticket." When Caleb won Best Actor, Isabella was sitting in the front row. When the host announced the name, everything seemed to pause for a moment. Then, polite, scattered applause started to ripple through the auditorium. Isabella looked up, watching her childhood friend on stage, crying his eyes out as he thanked this person and that one, finally mentioning her name. The camera panned to her at just the right moment. Suddenly, she thought of Leo. If he had won today, how would he have reacted? Would he cry? Smile? Feel a sense of relief? Would he mention her in his acceptance speech? She instinctively turned to look back toward the second row, where Leo's seat was supposed to be. It was tagged with his name, but it was empty. He wasn't there. To be fair, Isabella owed Caleb's family. 2 decades ago, after her mom left and her dad plunged himself into his work, neglecting everything else, she was left without any relatives around. Eventually, she was fostered in Caleb's home. From primary school through middle school, few peers were around her age, except for young Caleb. Since his family saw her as their own daughter, she treated Caleb like a brother, spoiling his every little want. But then she met Leo. Caleb went abroad to study acting, and they barely kept in touch. Until this. He wanted that award. He had called her, begging for it. Isabella held her phone, remembering how hard Leo had worked for it. So she paused, trying to reason with him. Without talent, winning wouldn't gain him any real recognition. But Caleb shook his head, his voice soft and pleading. "Please, Bella. You promised me you'd get me whatever I want. You wouldn't forget our childhood bond just for a boyfriend, right?" Isabella was right about one thing. The media and the public were not kind to Caleb for winning that Best Actor title. The internet was awash with criticism. What did Caleb even act in? It was a mess. Among the nominees, Leo's film was the only one worthy. What a trash film festival. Claims to be elite, but must have been bought out. Everyone had said Leo's rumored girlfriend was rich, but that her money had never cheated him to success. Leo was here today only because of his talent. Isabella scrolled through it all. Honestly, she could have stopped the negative buzz with her money and a few favors, but she didn't. After their harsh breakup, Leo had disappeared. They had bickered before, but he had always been the one to make the first move to reconcile. This was the longest silent treatment she had ever received from him. For over a week, he hadn't contacted her once. Isabella even had her assistant call him, with no success. From her pocket, she took out the ring Leo had left in the lounge, rubbing it between her fingers. Suddenly, a wave of panic and anxiety rose within her. When would he come back? He wouldn't just leave, right? At that moment, 2 soft knocks came at the door. An assistant came in holding a file. He lowered his head and said softly, "It's about Mr. Leo. We got some information." Isabella looked up sharply, eyeing the assistant. He was barely out of college and had made a mistake earlier, gone through disciplinary actions. But Leo had vouched for him, pulling him back from the brink. The assistant pulled out some photos, laying them on the table before Isabella. They were blurry, obviously taken in secret. The backdrop was snowy glaciers. A tall, slim woman had wrapped her arms around Leo, shielding him from the camera. Despite the darkness and the poor quality, Isabella instantly recognized her. Clara, the woman she had hated for so long, the one who had taken away her mother. It felt like something exploded loudly in her ears. Her fingers trembled uncontrollably. The assistant hesitated, adding, "We bought all the photos the paparazzi took. They were in a small town in northern Norway." Isabella pressed her hands against the table and slowly stood up. She chuckled coldly. "All right. Line up the travel arrangements. We leave tonight." Walking out of the airport, I spotted Clara immediately. I never expected someone of her stature to personally greet me. Spring in Norway is cold, and my coat was far too thin. While starting the engine, she handed me an unopened down jacket. "The place we're headed is called Longyearbyen," she explained. "It's roughly a 10-hour drive. A small town with only a few thousand folks, so it's very quiet. The nights seem long, too. We were just talking, and then suddenly Clara turned to me. "Have you read the script?" I quickly nodded. On the plane, I had read it thoroughly from start to finish. She smiled, and her voice was soft, but gentle. We chatted more about the character, and I realized then that Clara wasn't quite like the rumors suggested. People said she was quiet and reserved, a serious workaholic. I turned my head and snuck another glance at her. Since we had met, her smile had never disappeared. It was as if something had made her genuinely happy. Her eyes crinkled at the corners, and there was a hint of a blush on her cheeks. She seemed so gentle. Clara told me that Longyearbyen is the closest city to the Arctic. The movie has many scenes featuring the aurora borealis, so that's why they chose this spot. She had checked with the local weather station, and this month was the peak time for the phenomena, so we needed to seize the opportunity. I barely rested, quickly diving into filming. This movie is more of an art piece. There aren't many actors, and many of them are foreigners. My spoken English is just all right, so over a few days, I ended up talking more and more with Clara. She never seemed to mind answering my questions over and over, patiently teaching me the subtleties of the acting. Everything was going smoothly until something unexpected happened. Someone had leaked our filming schedule to the media. By evening, just as we were about to wrap up, several paparazzi descended on our location in small vans, their cameras flashing relentlessly. "Clara, is this the movie you've been working on for years? Could the lead actor tell us more?" "He looks familiar." "Leo, wasn't he just in the running for Best Actor?" "Leo, can we get an interview?" I thought I heard Clara curse under her breath. She took off her own coat and draped it over my head, wrapped an arm around my shoulders, and led me quickly to her Land Rover. She shot a sharp, cutting glance at the reporters. "Get lost. Mind your own business." It was the first time I had heard Clara sound so cold and tired. I realized then that she could be blunt with others too. She drove aggressively. The tabloid paparazzi seemed to really want this story, but they couldn't catch up. After a couple of sharp turns, Clara had lost them. She looked in the rearview mirror and then glanced at me. "There's only one hotel in this town, and the reporters might be there too. I have an apartment here. It's small, but it should do for now." The apartment was on the edge of town. It was tiny, with not many people living nearby, but the view was breathtaking. From the window you could see the ocean and an endless pale blue sky. I couldn't figure out why Clara would choose to buy a place so far away from everything. She noticed my curiosity and laughed. "My mom and dad found it on a trip once. My mom's a dancer, and she felt she could draw inspiration from such harsh, beautiful climates." I was puzzled for a bit. Then I realized she was talking about her stepmother. Clara spoke of her so respectfully. She might not be my biological mom, but she's always been incredibly kind to me. She acted in musicals back in her youth. You two might have a lot in common. She glanced at me. Leo, my mom is flying in soon. Maybe you'd like to meet her. No paparazzi followed us to the apartment, but it really was small. There was only one bedroom and a single bed. As we entered, Clara pulled out a set of fresh sheets and a comforter. She seemed a bit embarrassed. Leo, you take the bed. I'll sleep on the floor. The situation is being handled already. Things should get back to normal by tomorrow. I wanted to offer her the bed, but everything had been non-stop lately. The award show drama, the overnight flight, and then jumping straight into shooting, plus running from paparazzi today. I was completely exhausted. As I flopped back, I landed heavily on the bed. Clara seemed surprised. She hurried over and checked my forehead with her cool hand. You've got a fever, Leo. That night, Clara barely slept. She rummaged through the apartment's cabinet and found some medicine, though it was traditional herbal medicine. All night she stayed in the kitchen, boiling the concoction, while constantly checking on me. I lay there, watching her move back and forth, and suddenly I remembered a time when I was with Isabella. There was a rough period for her when her company was being investigated. Lots of reports had been filed against them, and inspectors were constant visitors for weeks. It wore her down completely. She barely slept, and in the end her health gave out, and she was hospitalized. I was out of the country for an event when I heard the news. I immediately canceled my schedule and flew back overnight, a journey that took hours. When I arrived at the hospital, Isabella was in a VIP room, fast asleep. I knew there was very little I could actually do, but still, I thought, what if she wanted someone familiar nearby when she awoke? Later, when Isabella opened her eyes, I was there, peeling an apple for her. She looked at me, her face blank and weary, not surprised at all. Maybe she was even annoyed. "Why bother coming back?" she asked. She paused, then gave a half smile. "Leo, don't tell me you're really in love with me." Her dismissive tone felt like she was reminding me that no matter how much love I poured into our relationship, our ending would not change. In a feverish haze, I seemed to confuse reality with the past. I opened my mouth and suddenly spoke Isabella's words back to her memory. "You don't really like me, do you?" As soon as I said it, I froze, realizing what had just happened. I hadn't spoken loudly, but Clara definitely heard me. She was standing at the kitchen door holding a bowl of freshly brewed herbal medicine, staring at me with wide, startled eyes. Her ears turned a deep shade of red, and her mouth opened and closed a few times. You what?" The atmosphere became painfully awkward. I sat up straight, waving my hands frantically to try and explain myself, but before I could say anything, there was a sudden, urgent knock at the door. The knocking was hard and insistent, as if something critically important was going on. Clara's expression turned serious. It was the middle of the night, and we were in a secluded area. If it wasn't the press, it was something to be cautious about. The knocking grew more frantic, almost like whoever it was about to break the door down. Clara moved toward the door, pointing behind her. "Under that cabinet," she said, her voice low. "There's a shotgun. If we need it, just throw it to me." She opened the door, and there stood Isabella, her eyes bloodshot, her clothes covered in the dust of travel. At first, Clara had thought it was a journalist who had gotten wind of something, or worse, a vagabond or a robber. As for Isabella, Clara wasn't oblivious to our relationship, but she had always thought of Isabella as arrogant and self-centered, someone who never truly cared for anyone else. When I missed the award ceremony, Isabella had become more possessive, as if betting that our relationship wouldn't be the same again. Clara never expected Isabella to come straight here, on a private plane in the dead of night, crossing half the globe. Her shirt was wrinkled, and her coat was still damp from the fog. She stepped in and saw me, bundled in blankets next to the sole bed in the apartment. The heater was cranked up, and with my fever, I was only wearing a thin shirt. No one spoke, but it was clear that Isabella had misunderstood the situation completely. She stood frozen for a moment, looking confused, as if she couldn't grasp what was happening. Then, she rushed forward, grabbing Clara by the collar and pushing her down, shouting and slapping her. "Who do you think you are? I always knew you had ulterior motives. From the moment you met Leo, your eyes never left him. Without me stopping you, would you have confessed to him?" I was shocked. I knew Clara had been sleepless from filming and from taking care of me all night. She was in no condition to stand up to Isabella like this. Leaning back against the cabinet, Clara smirked, though she looked utterly defeated. "You're right. I've liked him all along. Isabella, are you upset because you're scared Leo doesn't want you anymore?" That sneer seemed to set Isabella off for good. Staring at Clara with tears welling in her eyes, Isabella looked filled with a raw, visceral hate, seeing Clara as her mortal enemy. "Clara, why don't you just die? Why do you always take what's mine?" I had no doubt that Isabella wouldn't stop if no one intervened. So, I remembered Clara's words, found the shotgun under the cabinet, and pointed the dark, heavy muzzle at Isabella's shoulder. I took a deep breath and said, "Isabella, leave." I can still remember the look in Isabella's eyes. It was a mixture of panic and disbelief. I had followed her for so long, been so devoted, that she couldn't fathom I would ever stand against her for someone else. She lowered her gaze, ran her fingers along the cold steel of the barrel, and pushed it away gently. "You don't need the gun," Isabella murmured, with a touch of deep sadness. "I'm not thick-skinned enough to stick around if you tell me to leave." With a bang, the apartment door slammed shut. I rubbed my nose, turned around, and went over to Clara. I bent down to help her up. Clara's face turned nervous, remembering what she had confessed just moments before. She glanced away, picked up the bowl of herbal medicine, and coughed softly. "Drink this first," she said. "Then we'll figure things out." Yeah, figure things out. Wrapped up in my blanket, I laid back down and thought, Isabella is still here. Maybe I should finally settle things with her for good. Clara's herbal remedy worked wonders. I slept soundly through the night, only waking up around midday. Clara was draped in a coat, slumped in a chair by my bedside. She looked exhausted, her hair a mess, her lips pressed tightly together, lost in some dream. I smoothed her brow, careful not to wake her, put on my jacket, and opened the apartment door to head out. Rounding a corner, I found Isabella leaning against a massive Rolls-Royce Cullinan, holding a cigarette. By her feet was a small pile of burnt-out stubs. She slowly looked up as she heard my footsteps. "Bella," I said, "we need to talk." Her voice was raspy. "Okay?" A nearby park had a bench, and I took a seat, clutching my coat tighter around me. I felt much better after a night of real rest, but Isabella seemed to look even rougher than the night before. There was a vendor nearby, and she bought a hot drink to offer me. When she stretched out her hand, even though I tried not to look, I couldn't help but notice the platinum ring on her finger, the one I had begged her to buy as a matching set all those years ago. In 7 years, this was the first time she had ever worn it. I hesitated for a moment, then sighed and turned my head away. "What's the point? I lost mine ages ago. Isabella, you know as well as I do, there's no going back for us." She looked at me intensely, her throat working. I couldn't tell if it was from the cold, but it seemed like she choked up, her voice holding a hint of a whimper. "You haven't lost it," she insisted. She pulled out a small red velvet ring box from her coat pocket, her fingers trembling slightly. I went back to the resting room, I brought it back. This ring is the proof of our 7-year relationship. How can it be just lost like that? I'm going to put it on you right now." She kept repeating it in a low voice, almost in a daze, pulling at my fingers. "Once it's on," she said, "we'll go back and get married. We'll never be apart again." People always said Isabella was mature beyond her years, that she took over her family's company with a calm, composed demeanor and a mind for deep schemes. But now she seemed like a naive young girl, anxious, restless, and deeply uneasy. Her eyes were red, and she was gripping my wrist tightly, as if that simple act could keep me as the Leo she used to know, the one who was always trailing behind her. But when she looked up, all she saw in my eyes was a cold, disdainful gaze. Isabella finally broke down a little. "Don't look at me like that, Leo," she pleaded. "I know you want to win the Best Actor award before getting married. Consider it my debt to you, okay?" She didn't let go of my wrist. 10 minutes ago, I had sent Clara a text with my location. Now she drove over hurriedly, got out of the car, and grabbed Isabella, ready to take her away. Seeing Clara, Isabella's face turned gloomy. She paused and scolded her. "Are you done yet? This is between me and Leo. You want to fight, huh?" But before she could finish her sentence, a woman in high heels stepped out of Clara's car. Her voice was low, but carried an authority that made Isabella freeze. "Isabella, long time no see." It was Evelyn, a famous dancer. I had never met her in person, but I had seen her photos in newspapers and magazines. She must have been over 50, but she still looked elegant, her poise unmatched, a true classic beauty. She had started her career under a master and won countless awards, but at some point, gossip about her personal life had overshadowed her immense talent. She married into wealth, swiftly divorced, and, according to the tabloids, never looked at her children again. For years, people attacked her over these things, calling her heartless and cold, but I wondered if anyone ever thought about what drove her to that point. I looked at Isabella. Her hands were clenched into tight fists, disbelief warring with pain on her face. She leaned forward slightly, her lips quivering. Her voice was quiet, but you could still hear it in the morning silence. She whispered, "Mom." Evelyn shook her head. "Better not call me that. I just happened to be passing by today. I don't know what's going on with you youngsters." She glanced at me briefly. "Isabella, since it's mutual love you're talking about, you should ask Leo if he still wants to be with you." All eyes turned to me. Perhaps it was the presence of her biological mother, but Isabella finally let go of my hand. Frowning, she pleaded softly, saying my name one more time. "Leo." This time I ignored it. Instead, I walked over to Evelyn, this woman who had clearly been through so much. She glanced at me, patted my shoulder, and smiled a little. "All right. Since you've decided, let's go home." As we headed toward Clara's car, a cold breeze blew by. I heard a shout from behind us, full of anger, unwillingness, and a deep, raw pain. It wasn't directed at me, but at the mother who had left a decade ago. "I've already admitted my wrongs. Why won't you forgive me? You abandoned me for so many years, and now someone else loves me, and you want to take him away too? Mom, why do you hate me so much? Why?" she cried. I didn't look back. Evelyn didn't either. We both knew that some things are just beyond fixing. After we got back to the small apartment, Evelyn called me over, wanting to chat a little more. She brought up the little house, saying that when she and Clara's dad had traveled to Norway, they had randomly picked it out. It was just an offhand remark then, but he had remembered it. After dinner that night, he took her to find the seller and completed the deal on the spot. She tilted her head at me and winked. "Actually, Clara and her dad are quite alike. She's a gentle girl, and she's liked you for a while now." I was a bit surprised. Really? Although Isabella's angry accusations had mentioned it, Clara and I had hardly interacted over the years, making it seem not quite real. Evelyn nodded. Yes, she has all your posters and magazines since your debut, but you were dating Isabella then, and given their complicated relationship, it was hard for her to intervene. But I think if she had known you and Isabella wouldn't last, she might have acted sooner. Evelyn said she was off to explore more of the town before leaving. As she left, she repeated what she had said in front of Isabella. Love requires mutual feelings, Leo. Though Clara is nice, it's your choice to make. Walking back to the apartment alone, I looked up and saw Clara coming from the opposite direction. Our eyes met, and she quickly walked over to me. After a quick look over to make sure I was okay, she finally asked cautiously, "Leo, did my mom say anything to you?" I chuckled. "Why? Afraid of what I'll find out?" I meant it as a joke, but Clara stopped, nodding seriously. "Yeah, I'd prefer to tell you myself. Leo, I like you." Though we were close to the Arctic, today's weather seemed unusually nice. I gently took her hand in mine, smiling. "Although we've only known each other for 7 days," I whispered softly. "Even after 7 years together, does it mean things will end well? So, Clara, how about we start getting to know each other from today?" Extra, Isabella. Isabella's father passed away from late-stage cancer on the same day Leo got married. Before he died, he still held on to the hope that Evelyn would come back and see him one last time. Isabella sat by the hospital bed, looking at her father's gaunt figure, and gently encouraged him to let go of this impossible dream. Her father was terribly ill, and his mind was slipping. Sometimes he thought it was 30 years ago, just after he had gotten married. He would stretch out his scar-covered arm, constantly calling Evelyn's name. "Evelyn, want some cake? Evelyn, don't upset your mom. Evelyn, come back, just this once." Then he would briefly regain some clarity, looking at Isabella sorrowfully. "Bella, call your mom. Tell her it's my dying wish she'll have a change of heart." Isabella remembered that morning in Norway when her mother had told her, "Don't call me Mom." Some wounds cut too deep to ever heal. She put her phone down and shook her head. "Stop dreaming. You know what today is, right? It's the day his stepchild got married." Isabella leaned over, close to his ear, speaking slowly and deliberately. "Don't you see? She valued that daughter and son-in-law of hers so much more than us. It's better you stop dreaming about it. She's forgotten all about us. On a day like this, why would she care?" Her father passed on. Isabella stood outside the hospital, lighting a cigarette, thinking back. Her parents did have some good times together. When did it all change? Maybe it was when her dad's childhood friend, a woman with a proper family background, returned home. Evelyn didn't fit in with those rich families. They looked down on her as a dancer and criticized her unfairly. Then, her own husband began to compare Evelyn with another heiress. Isabella sometimes wondered how her mother had held on for as long as she did. Perhaps she had something that kept her going, until she didn't anymore. Once, when Evelyn was practicing dance at home, a young Isabella had stepped out from her bedroom, looking down from the top of the staircase. She was just a small child, but stood tall with disapproval, telling her mother, "Can't you stop making noise? No wonder everyone says dancers and singers and actors don't belong at the table. Can you stop embarrassing Dad and me?" Isabella often thought that parental views might really shape our lives. Though she was so full of regret after her mom left, when she got together with Leo, she still looked down on his acting career. Everything finally exploded when Caleb returned. After Leo got married, he and Clara moved south. The film he shot in Norway was a huge success, winning praise and smashing box office records. The next year, he was nominated at 3 major international film festivals and won his first Best Actor award. In this industry, people only respect success. He rarely heard people mention Caleb's name anymore. Even Isabella didn't think about him much since she had lost touch. Leo thought his life was definitely moving forward. 7 years later, Clara got pregnant. They traveled often, sometimes with Evelyn and Clara's father. That year, Isabella was traveling for work and stumbled into a conversation about Leo. Someone mentioned, "You know Clara, right? That super famous director. I heard her muse is her husband. They're probably in the city right now, booked at this very hotel." Isabella's heart skipped a beat. It had been years since she had checked in on them. Maybe fate wanted them to cross paths again. She sat for a moment, then stood up, leaving her drink behind. Ignoring the surprised looks from her colleagues, she marched out. But she had no idea where Leo might be, or if that person was even telling the truth. Wandering the hotel hallways with her phone in her hand, feeling completely lost, she bumped into a nanny with a child near a vending machine. The little girl was pointing at the chocolate in the display, her voice soft and sweet. "I want that. I want to eat it." The nanny hesitated. "You've already had sweets today, my dear. Mommy wouldn't agree." "All right," the girl pleaded, turning around. Isabella realized that after all these years, she hadn't forgotten him. She could recognize his child instantly. Isabella bought all the chocolate from the vending machine. Dressed elegantly, she seemed imposing, and the nanny didn't say a word. The little girl was delighted. Isabella asked her, "Is your daddy happy today?" The child, around 5 years old, nodded enthusiastically. "Of course. We saw the ocean, we went to the amusement park, and we watched fireworks at night. Grandpa took Grandma to the art exhibit she always wanted to see. Daddy gave Mommy a beautiful pink diamond, and now I have chocolate too." Isabella finally understood. It was fate, but not the kind where they would meet again. It was fate telling her that time had passed. He was truly, irrevocably lost to her now.